Hi everybody, Amy and Annalie again. This time I'd like to talk a little bit about the pancreas. This is one of the best examples of an endocrine organ that I think we can really grab a hold of while we're talking about the endocrine system. If you take a look here, this organ there, this is the pancreas. And the pancreas is this yellowy, grainy looking organ found right at the initial curve of the small intestine and just underneath the stomach. If you see that and we take a look on the inside, what we'll find is that the pancreas actually has multiple tissue types. It's actually a part of two different organ systems. The pancreas has exocrine function, meaning that it secretes substances onto the epithelial wall of the small intestine. And these are digestive enzymes that get secreted from the pancreatic duct into this area of the small intestine to help us digest the food that we've eaten. So that's the exocrine portion. But we also have an endocrine portion, and we know that the difference between endocrine and exocrine is where the product is secreted. So exocrine gets secreted into or onto an epithelial surface like we see here. Exocrine gets secreted where? Into the bloodstream. So this little section, just this circle right here, this is a microscopic image of the pancreas. This is the section that is endocrine in function, and all of this around it, that's all the exocrine tissue that secretes the digestive enzymes. So we're going to take a closer look at this endocrine section called the pancreatic islet. Here's another picture of that. Here is the pancreatic islet. This is the part that has the endocrine function. All of this out here is the exocrine gland, okay, surrounding the islet. So let's take a look in here, and what we'll see are that we have two major cell types, the alpha cells and the beta cells. These two cells secrete different hormones, and they get secreted into the bloodstream, right? It gets picked up into the bloodstream and it travels throughout the entire body. If we start with the alpha cells, also written like this, they secrete a hormone called what? Glucagon. And the job of glucagon is to take these big chains of glucose called glycogen, right? Do you remember that from a previous chapter? So glycogen is just this huge branched chain of glucose molecules that's in the liver, and we use this glycogen to actually store extra glucose. Well, what glucagon does, when it gets released, it travels to the liver and it triggers the snipping off of individual glucose molecules. And those glucose molecules go into the blood to increase glucose levels. So glucagon is secreted when glucose levels have dropped below normal and we want to get them back to where they should be. So that one is glucagon. The beta cells have a different job. The beta cells here, their job is to secrete insulin. And insulin you've already heard about in this chapter for sure, but the job of insulin is to decrease blood glucose levels. And it does that by actually helping get the glucose into the body cells. So your body cells need glucose in order to make ATP. But the glucose that's out there can't actually get in until the insulin ends up triggering the production of these glucose transporter proteins, like transport channels, that allow the uptake of glucose into the body cells. So insulin increases the uptake of glucose, which then decreases the blood glucose levels. Let me erase all that for you. So here's another example of how glucose and insulin work together. So here is the glucose that we need to get into our cells, right? But that glucose channel is closed. It's not actually present or available to get the glucose in. So the glucose might try to get in, but it can't fit. But when we have insulin present in the blood, then that insulin binds to its receptor on this cell, which ends up opening or creating the glucose channel, which allows all the glucose to make its way into the cell. So if you think about it, the insulin is really like a key that helps open up those glucose transport channels to allow that glucose to come in. Here is another example of how we use glucose and insulin and glucagon all together. So let's say that we eat a meal. We've put all this great food into our mouth and it goes into our small intestine. The glucose gets moved into the bloodstream through the process of absorption. So all these blue dots here, these are glucose molecules, and our glucose level has now gone up because we've eaten food. Well, the cells in the pancreas detect that, and they actually secrete insulin, so it increases insulin production in response to the increase of blood glucose levels. So the insulin travels through the bloodstream, and the insulin is going to cause individual body cells to take up glucose, but it also helps the liver to take up glucose and add it to glycogen to increase the size of that glycogen storage molecule. So in the process, the result of insulin is that we have dropped our blood glucose levels back to normal.